So why would I want to buy one of these, Mr. Radio Shack Manager?
Why would you want to buy one? Because now everybody's a can cooler vigilante.
Just came back from my lunch coffee break, and I don't see them. They're there. Yeah, see these guys, these bigger guys flying around? We got some little bugs here, some fungus gnats and stuff. I've overwatered a few plants, admittedly, but we got some like predator wasps or something flying around here too. At least I think that's what they are. I think they're a predator wasp. But I just came home and opened the tent and saw them cruising around. I thought I would try and catch a couple clips. I believe they're the same species that I found in the tent on the corn the other day. I did get a good close-up video of one hanging out on a corn leaf, so I'll share that here. I believe this is some type of predator wasp, which I've seen a few of these guys flying around under my lights in the big tent. I think he must have transferred over with the corn, but really cool to see a nice balance of biology in a controlled grow environment system like this. Like, I mean, most people would freak out, oh my god, it's a bug, but he looks very much like a wasp. And I believe he is a predator wasp, and I suppose he's probably been feasting on the few little bugs that are here and there. There's a few fungus gnats here and there in the big tent. There were aphids in this tent, and I did find a few aphids on a few other plants, including the sweet potatoes in the other tent. So the one bin of sweet potatoes I pulled the sweet potatoes out, and we'll plant those into good soil again. And leave behind the aphid issue. The old soil will stay out in the cold and freeze out, and it can cook down until spring. But I've been babbling while staring at this dude. I don't know, hope you find this interesting. December 26th, 2023. Poor corn is hurting in here. I've been, I was laxed in watering over the Christmas break here. I'm going to hit him again with water and another foliar feed today. But we got our first pollen tassels showing up, and I've never had sweet corn throwing out pollen in December before, December 26th. So, interesting. I think I would probably plant a lot less corn plants for the next experiment in these crates. I don't know what I would do to solve the height. I'd love to have a bigger grow space, taller grow space, but you know, we're limited to what we got for now. Anyway, just a quick update. All right. Kind of getting neglectful in being patient, I find. You know, you have to kind of not pay attention enough to let things grow, but pay attention enough to catch all the details and keep them growing. Yeah, always a tricky balance as a grower to maintain that. But we got some very large tomato growth here. We've got tomatoes coming on. I was hoping by Christmas we would have some ripe ones, but that didn't quite happen. But, you know, we're getting some decent pollination here. Certainly the main vine of that is very robust and healthy and growing well. We got lots of fruits and flowers coming on. Seems to be adjusting pretty well from the transplant. I just transplanted this over to this bigger soil grow bag maybe a week ago, maybe a little more. Because I couldn't keep up with watering it, and I knew it needed more soil volume, basically. But now I do have to come back and do some pruning. The okra here is doing really well, and as are the King Arthur peppers. And then there's some oregano in the under canopy of that. Always just trying to keep everything covered with green growing plants. I'm realizing I've never grown okra before, but I know these King Arthur peppers will get big and have quite a demand. So I think I'm going to bump these from this crate up to another grow bag like that and push them in the corner where the cannabis is currently. And I'm going to transplant the San Marzano tomatoes and these other tomatoes. I think these are beefsteaks or something I started. I'll actually have to go back and look at the log as to what they are. But I think I'm going to transplant those up to grow bags as well. And then I'm going to have to get some grow stakes and be able to stake. I'll trellis basically along the back wall here with all the tomatoes and vine type stuff. And that way we can kind of control and contain it and get good light exposure for everything without taking a tremendous amount of floor space. And then I can start evolving out with more shelving and rack space and managing this space much more efficiently. And once I get to that, then I'll be able to flip trays over faster, and I can get stuff rolling like this large leaf basil that I've grown to love instantaneously from the first moment I tried it. My son loves basil too, so I'll want to be growing more of this. The lettuce is doing really well. The mesclun mix, the rosa is doing well. The beets are just cranking. Nice big leaves coming on them. I don't think we're forming any roots yet, but I do need to come back through here and do some thinning. The lemon verbena is just blowing up. I took a bunch of this on Christmas. Yeah, I cut it yesterday. I took a bunch off of this. And for tea for my mom and for a guest we had and all. Anyway, so I come back here today, and this was literally cut yesterday. So all this growth, these three popping out here, that's all new growth in just a little over 24 hours, maybe 26 hours. Everything from the base of that stem point, where all those new leaves are, is new growth in 24 hours, 26 hours. So that's very impressive. This is the sweet Thai basil. We see a little wrinkle in there. The soil wasn't quite fully cooked when it came in. I've got a couple new batches going, but they've been outside, so temperatures aren't as great for cooking soils. I have to bring them in and see how they are. That's coming up tonight, tomorrow, something like that. What else going on here? The fig is just blowing up. This thing is throwing out new growth in absolutely all directions at phenomenal rates. New shoots coming out the bottom. I want to start doing some more cloning on this, but I kind of want to wait a little longer because I don't want to have too many plants in this grow space before we get a little closer to spring. Lemon tree is doing well. Seems to have established to its new soil. And it's a little light in color, so it might need some iron and maybe a little sulfur, maybe a bit of nitrogen. I don't know. But it definitely is taking and balancing out a little better. I'm going to continue to care for it and love it. And we'll see how it does. I think a lot of those fruits aborted on me, though, which is too bad. But I was kind of half expecting that with all the shock of transplanting and pruning. But that's okay. Now it's got a chance to heal and correct and recover and grow healthy and vibrant and really go crazy on production again. So that's where we're at. I guess I'll just give you a shot of this holy basil quick. 4 different types. Temperate, Roma, Uana, and Krishna. So, and these are delicious too. I probably will transplant some of these out into some other crates and kind of disperse this space out a bit more now that things are established and growing. And I have to dig out the rosemary from under there and get them into their own space so we can start growing them out. They're just taking off from seed. Wow. Look at that robust growth. Man, it's super exciting to have it right, finally. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's have a look at the catnip project. We got 2 catnip that came up, and I must have mistakenly dropped a large leaf basil in there. That's not a sad mistake to make. And we got a volunteer weed here too that I had left initially, but I actually thought that was a catnip cotyledon at first, but no. But we got 2 successful, healthy catnip plants popped up. That's probably going to take a tremendous amount of space up. So we're going to transplant those up to a crate as well. Probably pair those with something else and, you know, try and work our space as efficiently as possible. Anyway, just thought I'd do a quick update. I know it's probably not all that quick of an update. I get long-winded, but there's lots to show and share. Oh yeah, the stevia over here. And I probably will start another batch of that because the soil in this rosemary crate was recycled soil, and I compare real easy here. I compare the growth of the basil there and how it's a bit wrinkled. It's not looking super happy. Now the rosemary on the other hand is doing well. Tremendous essential oil production, getting sticky. But I've had happier, healthier rosemary. So I probably should switch the soil out, and I probably should just move these stevia to new soil. Just was looking for a space for them where they had better light. My point was comparing the large leaf basil for soil comparison over there against this stuff over here. And you can see that these plants, despite even being kind of sheltered from light at this point, like competing for light, are very large, robust. Their leaves have a little wrinkle like a basil does, but they're not that like super wrinkled up like unhappy plant. My fingers are super sticky from rosemary. Anyway, just wanted to point out the difference in soils. Alright, now I'm really done blabbing. I swear. So here we are a little bit later. Been outside. I mixed up 2 big 55-gallon bags of soil. Actually a bale of Pro Mix each, an appropriate amount of KISS Organics Amendment about 2 weeks ago. Actually be 2 weeks tomorrow. So I'm a little jumping the gun, but I'm just layering the bottom of these grow bags with the new stuff. And then I got some old stuff here that's cooked down for more like a month. So I'm going to layer like an inch of that on top of that, just to protect the roots from direct exposure to soil that probably isn't quite finished cooking yet. And then I'll drop the planter in, and then I'll fill around the edges with the older soil, of course, so that we don't burn the root tips as they're coming in. And hopefully that'll get us squared away for one more tomato plant over there. And I think the other one's going to have to go over where the okra and peppers are. And like I said, I think we'll bump the okra and peppers at a future date when they get a little bit bigger into a grow bag and put them in the corner. And then they can all basically take that whole first 2-3 feet of the grow tent space coming off of the wall there, trellised with tomatoes, peppers, etc. We'll see how it works out. That's the plan, at least. All right, there they are, looking a little tattered from the transplant, but certainly they'll have some more space. I'm going to go back, like I said, and fill a little bit of the older soil mix around the edges here, just make sure those roots are tucked up against good soil. I'll give these guys a good water afterward. Interesting looking at the sprinklings I put on here. This was what you see here on top of the surface was malted barley, and I put it on ground and then watered it in. It's interesting how you can see the microbial life really just reaching up and grabbing that, especially the mycorrhizae seem to be grabbing at that. So it's apparent that my information on that is good. It's spawning a lot of biological activity. And I see we have a little bit of potassium or deficiency or calcium deficiency showing up here in the tomatoes. So I think our transplant timing is just on, or maybe even a little late, but I have to wait for a certain amount of root bound to handle transplants in crates this large, or they just fall apart on you. It's a balancing act. All right, it's all over but a little watering in. We're not going to do that just yet, because we got to transplant that other crate with tomatoes in it first into another grow bag, and I got some more soil mixing to do and such. But just gonna go back over there, and we'll get some trellis stakes in here as soon as I can swing. One tip I'll throw at you about having a grow tent as big as this You know, the small grow tents, you can work in them without stepping in them. But as soon as you got a grow tent as big as this and you got to step in and out of it, you don't want to be tracking that back into your normal floor space. So I'm methodical about, after transplanting, making a soil mess or whatever, I clean up. I suppose most people are. But it's really nice having a dedicated broom in your grow room and a dedicated dustpan, so you don't have to worry about contaminating soils. Like when I clean this up, I'll scoop this back into the soil bin, right? Because this is all soil I spilled out of the soil bin. But if I were using a dustpan that I was using for other cleaning purposes, it might have toxins or something on it, I wouldn't be scooping that back into the bin. I'd have to throw that in the garbage can. So that's one thing. The other thing is, it's just nice to have a broom right handy for fast cleanup. It makes it easy to stay on top of it and keep it in clean operating order. Well, here we are with the other set of tomatoes. I'm not even sure what these are. I'll have to go back and look in the log. Oh no, I did put a tag in. Oh, these are black creme. Oh yeah, I knew there was a reason I was excited I planted these. I just couldn't remember what I planted. I've refreshed my own memory. These are black creme tomatoes. These are awesome. These are a big, dark, deep, blackish red colored beefsteak tomato. And they have such excellent flavor. Oh, they're amazing. A breeder friend of mine about 10 or 15 years ago bred a cross of a black creme and I don't know what yellow tomato, but he made a yellow creme tomato that had all the flavor of a black creme in a yellow tomato. It was amazing. Unfortunately, I was unable to capture and save those seed, and I don't know that he even has those anymore. I haven't seen them in forever. But they were really good, and might be a fun cross to make in the future. We'll see. Without babbling on too much here, underneath these, that oregano that I got from my friend Amanda, and the rosemary, and one sage plant, which I almost grabbed thinking it was a weed, and then I realized that actually probably is a sage plant. So only one of those. I know those seed packets were old. She gave them to me just because she didn't want, she wanted them to go to use rather than just sit around and go bad entirely. And boy, they worked out good, man. We got a bunch of oregano up. I'm stoked about that. I got one sage, which I'll be able to replicate from, and a bunch of new rosemaries. I'm really stoked about that. I've wanted to start some fresh rosemary from seed again in good soil for a long time. And the opportunity, the seed, the soil, location, all those pieces hadn't lined up. But yeah, they did this time. I've babbled on an awful long time about this, but I'm just excited. Okay, so I just hefted this crate now, and it's pretty heavy. Soil-wise, I'm afraid the root ball might break apart on me if I try to transplant from it. So I think I'm going to go finish mixing soil for now and then see what I can do about orchestrating some space here. I definitely want to get these rosemary. How many are here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rosemary that came up. I want to get those into a separate planter, and the sage should go somewhere. Because I really want to get these tomatoes bumped over together as a batch and not lose the soil block. I don't know. I might hold off on transplanting these a couple of days and let this dry out just a little more before we do that. That's probably going to be my best plan of action to avoid damage. So yeah. But in a couple of days, we'll transplant these into a grow bag. Same gig. New soil, old soil blend. It'll go over here in the corner. I'll tuck it right back against our air intake over there, and we'll train it up our stakes over here. I might even shift things down that way a bit. But I gotta get back and do some pruning on that tomato, but I'm hesitant to do that just yet. So much to consider. Oh well, I'll need to show these figs and how well they've taken off in the kiss soil. Like, for real. And that's not just one, that's all of them. They're all just like cranking. So, good copies on them. I'm pretty sure I caught a clip the other day of these sweet potatoes. We had aphids in the crate there, and I don't know what was going on, but I don't think the soil was well balanced or whatever. I had an issue. So rather than have that infestation start to grow or have problems, I just dumped that crate of soil out into a kick bin overnight. We were still getting some pretty cold weather at that point, but they were insulated in the soil, so they were protected from freeze damage. And I just brought them back in here and stuck them down in this and wetted it a little bit with the watering can just to keep them moist and keep them in sort of an easy growth state. I'm going to transplant these into a bin of fresh Kiss soil again and get them rolling. You can see we've got a couple different varieties here. We've got this red one that my friend Monica gave me. Oh boy. When was this? Must have been 2021, I think. Anyway, a red one that she gave me that I like very much. And I think these other ones are just Beauregards that I sprouted from a store, sweet potato or something. But anyway, I'm going to throw these in a crate. I'll probably, because I need a home for that catnip, I'll probably put that catnip in with the sweet potatoes and they can share the space. Catnip being a nice vertical growth and the sweet potatoes being a vine growth. I will have to keep those sweet potato vines in check. But so once again, an extremely dense planting. I don't really expect to run production level on these. I basically just want to preserve living, growing propagation tissue, so in the spring I can go out into a grow plot or planters or whatever. I love these things. They're delicious. I don't have the space to grow large quantities right now, but I can hold the living tissue culture, the seed stock, in living culture ongoing and be improving its genetics and health and vigor along the way, so that when I do have the space I can plug in and play out. All right, there we go. I've topped up with the older soil mix, the month-old stuff. I only have a little bit left. I'm saving the rest of that to go around the edge of those tomatoes for in a couple days when those get transplanted. I'm going to stick this catnip and probably the holy basil or the large leaf basil on top of here as a top tier. And I might stick a couple holy basil or something else, one of these other plants that I'm looking for a home for, into here just to help everybody work together. Anyway, that's it for now. There we go. Should be happy in their new home, I would think. Soil's got good moisture. We're not going to water that. We're going to let them seek that container. So just back in here after these transplants and soil orchestrations and such, and feeling pretty good about it. But it did call my attention to something I figured I ought to address it. Before I do, though, I just realized that we have some chamomile. It's actually flowering, so cool. I noticed that these holy basil plants were having a little bit of sort of a wilty thing. I noticed a little on these guys. I even see it on the chamomile a little bit. They're just kind of a little droopy, a little off. Going, what's going on here? I left the crate. The heft for weight to see how much water's in there is pretty heavy. So I think this crate is just a little overwatered. And I've had a bit of a fungus gnat problem in here ongoing. I know I have been overwatering things a little bit. I tend to err on the side of caution with seedlings. So easy for them to curl up and die. And I'm still not used to having a humidifier in here. We can keep that humidity. That makes such a massive difference for seedlings and for little pots and planters that can dry out so easily and rapidly. It's easy to go away for a day of work and come back and find a seedling totally dried out if you can't maintain humidity. But now that we've got that dialed in, that makes a big difference. So I tend to overwater a bit and I have to readjust my calibration on that. But so I noticed the wilting here, and that called my attention to one of the environmental controls here that I have the ability to manage, and I haven't quite been managing as efficiently as I should be. So what is it? Well, it's a really important one in a grow tent or any controlled grow environment. It's airflow circulation. If you saw my greenhouse series several years back, you may recall air circulation was a huge topic in that too. Well, here in the grow tent we have the AC Infinity circulator fans. These plug into the AC Infinity controller 69, and so I can adjust and vary these, their oscillation speed and fan speed and all that sort of stuff. Actually, I think just fan speed, whatever. Anyway, these are great circulator fans. I've got 3 in here. Ideally, I'd like 4. I might add one more, but if I do that, I have to add on another controller because the controller can't take more than 4 ports. So I may add a second controller, and actually when I think about it, I may add a second fan and filter next year just to have redundancy and a little better capacity to quickly exchange air out. Anyway, it called my attention to that our circulation wasn't really high enough, and I'm looking around and I wasn't seeing good airflow. Like, you should see the plants. You see how the plants respond as the fan oscillates across them? Right? You can see each plant like shake a little bit, right? Now what's that do? Well, if you look up close, the plant shaking back and forth in the wind, it's stressing and breaking the cells in that stem at each shake. And that's causing the plant to have to respond and rebuild those cells. That makes that stem much stronger. So plants that are exposed to wind, especially critical for seedlings. Plants that get exposed to a lot of wind and a lot of shaking around and beating up, that makes their stems super strong so they can support strong weights of fruits, flowers, whatever the yield is later. And wow, that smells fantastic. Lemon verbena, Aloysia citradella. Anyway, that's why air circulation is so important. That's one reason. And another is carbon dioxide exchange. John Kempf talks about this. He said one of the single most limiting factors in farm fields is carbon dioxide, if you can believe it. We live in an atmosphere where everyone seems to be so worried about carbon dioxide. But guess what? That's the one thing plants run out of really quick. So 2 things about that. We need to push airflow over the leaves so that those stomata can absorb the carbon dioxide and release oxygen and transpirate moisture out. We need that airflow to happen all the time so there's always fresh carbon dioxide available, and we're removing the oxygen and the humidity away from the plant so it can continue to transpirate and continue to run that photosynthetic process where it's sending energy and sugars and exudates down into the root system, feeding the microbial communities, and that returns nutrition back to the plant and accelerates its growth. Those are critical factors. The other critical factor, of course, is the exchange rate of air inside of this growth space. That's critical as well. That's also controlled in the 69 controller. I regulate that primarily by temperature and humidity because when you start running artificial lights that are capable of the power output these are capable of, your heat demands quickly overcome your airflow exchange demands, and you end up doing your exchange based on heat and humidity rather than actual airflow exchange requirement. You're just moving so much air. You never have to worry about it, really. But we're going to continue to monitor our CO2 levels in here, since we now do have that ability. We're in tent A. I know that controller doesn't read very well on the camera there, but we're in tent A, and I've been in here working, so we're sitting at 684 parts per million, and that's an excellent example. Both of these grow tents are in the same living space, in the same room, and the one I'm in is at 692 parts per million carbon dioxide, and the other tent with the corn in it, without any people in it, is at 529 parts per million. There's a really good indicator of how carbon dioxide is limited very quickly, and how carbon dioxide levels can vary dramatically in a space dependent on very small changes, including just myself breathing. I've blabbered on about this enough, but I wanted to make the point because it's an important one. All right, I was a little rough on the on the root structure in here, but kind of had to be to get those rosemary out. Did get them out though. And I know this may seem counterintuitive. It's probably easier for most people to start in those little planter pack cells or start in 6-inch pots like this. But I find I can sow entire flats of large amounts of seed into small flats like that and catch them early like this, or even earlier, and just hand separate the roots out very gently and transplant them in, and so I can start a tremendous amount of seed in a very small space. That's what I'm really getting at here. But these are the rosemary. I miscounted because there were a couple of clusters that were very tightly together in that dense seedling pack, and there are actually 8. So that's awesome. 8 brand new rosemary started in high nutrition soil right from the get-go from seed. They haven't been through years of stress in the greenhouse or abuse of all sorts. So it'd be interesting to see how they perform and express themselves. We're already seeing on some of these ones that really took off some really explosive, healthy growth. So looking forward to that. I'm going to size these up a little bit and let them start to get just a hair root bound into these pots so that they'll transplant easy. And I think I'm probably going to set them off into, I'll just give all 8 of them one crate to share. And that'll be our rosemary growth and propagation crate. And from there I can literally produce thousands of cuttings. While I'm in here working and my mind is sharp on the subject, microclimates. So I just split those rosemary seedlings off of the main crate into some 6-inch pots. They're in a very fragile state with this fresh transplant. A lot of finger handling of roots, a lot of loose roots with the soil kind of falling away. Pressed in firmly, carefully, not watered, just moist soil. But microclimates is my point here. 2 very different climates. And this space is maybe 4.5 or 5 foot apart. Yeah, probably 5. Maybe as much as 6. But over here, we got the Ys. These are on. Most of the time, they do switch out with the X, right? Airflow is a little higher due to the fan up here and over there and over there. So there's a lot of moving air in here, right? So these seedlings are a little bit bigger and healthier. So I feel like they can take that transplant a little easier. So I'm not so worried about them being exposed immediately to a little bit higher airflow, a little bit more light. But then these seedlings, these guys are a little bit smaller, a little bit more immature and fragile. And this one actually has a little wilting showing. And we'll see if that comes through or not. So I want to keep them with a little less airflow. I don't want them right after this transplant right away to get exposed to intense, long periods of high intensity light. So since the X only comes on for a couple hours in cycles in between the Ys, so we distribute our light around here, that gives us a little bit lower light environment, a little bit less airflow. And because we have the humidifier in here, we're able to maintain humidity throughout. Right now I've had the door open, so we're a little low right now at 63. But we usually sit between 65 and 70% in here. So that keeps things from drying out too quickly and all. Anyway, I just want to make the point about microclimates. You can pick lots of awesome little microclimates in a space and take advantage of those if you really understand where you are in the plant's life and process and what the microclimates are in your environment. And you can learn how to dial, tune, and control those. So one of those microclimates I use is over here by the humidifier where there's air coming in this inlet. Okay, so this is a slightly drier environment here as well. So these are going to get a little bit of fresh air, which will really help them with some vigor, but also it's going to let them dry out a little bit. The soil is a little bit moist, a little heavy, and they'll have a chance to dry out where that fresh airflow is coming in. Whereas once it's come in and come through the humidifier, now it's fully humidified air, and it's going to take on a little less moisture, a little less easily. Same here. We have a couple of plants here, little seedling starts, and I mentioned in this video before that we have some problems with fungus gnats in here. And so because of the fungus gnat issue, an easy way for me to keep them off these little seedlings until they get up and out of range of fungus gnat damage and I get my watering cycles balanced back correctly again is to put them up here near this fan, and that keeps the fungus gnats at bay a little better. It's harder for them to get in and mess with it because there's this constant air push that drives them away and makes it unpleasant for them. So that's another microclimate. Over here, we're looking at a combination of climates, right? We want maximum airflow and very high light intensity, right? Because we're trying to flower and fruit this huge tomato plant, right? So over here, it's underneath both Y lights. It's getting the complement of both of those. And even when this X is on, some of that light sheds across to here. So it's getting maximum light, maximum airflow, and that allows it to perform at maximum level. It's a high energy intensity flowering, fruiting plant, and it needs a different climate than a new seedling A very new seedling, a very fragile seedling, a pepper plant in old soil who can just take an ass kicking, a rosemary in old soil, ginger in the corner where we keep it damp and not quite as much light, right? So my point is about microclimates, and that there are many in here, and you can do this in your own environment. You can learn to identify and tune to them, and tune the plant's life cycle to them, and you can maximize your growth and potential and plant health and vigor in doing so. Really do work in flushes, I gotta say. You know, I've been looking to get this friggin' pepper plant out of this planter and into some better soil. I mean, this thing, I've had this thing since 2021, like September of 2021. My mom gave this to my wife and I when we moved back from Canada. So I've had this plant a long time. It's struggled along. I've basically just watered it and tried to give it foliar feeds and just keep it alive. It's a Trinidad scorpion pepper from Chef Jeff. What is that? Yeah, that's 2 million Scovilles. I don't know what I would do that besides make tear gas. But, you know, I can't let a living plant die. I just have to save them. And I really don't want to give it primo space. But you know what I can do? I got this planter over here that we just put all those sweet potatoes in to keep that tissue culture stock alive. And we got this couple of catnip and a basil here. They're going to just evolve and grow into a giant tall beam. Why not stick this pepper in there and take advantage of that soil and space? It'll give it a little bit better soil and chance, and everybody can co-mingle and work together. Gung-ho. Well, now you know how it is. We're in there, working, doing it, grooving. Yeah. Doing this transplant, and thought we'd stop and look at the roots. I know this light isn't great, is it? I don't have an X behind me. Do I have? Ugh, good lord. Alright, we got a light on now on the camera here, so I hope you can see this better. Just want to give you a close-up look at these roots, if we can. Yeah, there we go. Just so you can see how root-bound this was. I mean, you can literally see the shape of the base of the pot imprinted in a root mat. Okay? That's a plant that's out of space. That's a plant that's been looking for help for a long time. And you could even be trying to help it and not help it because you didn't do this. This is important. You got to rough these roots up and break up that root-bound tip structure all around so that that plant's roots will know that it's in a different soil space and seek out. Because if you don't do that, it's probably not even going to go look around because it's going to think it's still in just a pot. Anyway, we'll settle her back in there. Try not to overwhelm the... Whoops. Try not to overwhelm the catnip in its place over there. And then we'll just tuck these back in a little bit. Dink, dink, dink. And I probably two-handed press that down a little bit more when I have two hands free. That'll be that. The Trinidad. Be curious to see what that does in good soil. I bet that thing blows up and comes back strong. Once again, epigenetics, environment dictates gene expression. So I just dumped that crate of turmeric stuff out. It was really wet. But there were quite a few worms in there. So that's encouraging. I'm hoping they'll find their way down in. Or I probably should just snag them. Yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll snag them and drop them right in the crate. Just save a few of those guys. Get them in the soil circulation and running. For the acorns germinating here. I've been pulling acorn trees or oak trees, little baby oak trees up here and there in various planters that the acorns managed to migrate into in that first soil mix. All right, final run. I got a mixture of some old crates that are still in decent shape and some new crates. I'm gonna shake out of the mixer crate. This last batch of soil, as I was pawing through it, was not well mixed, even though I thought I mixed it pretty well. You can never seem to get a soil mixed well. So both bags were not really mixed as well as I'd like. So as they're coming back out, I'm stirring it up and then mixing back and forth between crates to get it really uniformly mixed and broken up. Just to make sure we get good uniform nutrient distribution and soil quality. So just another tip about soil: if you're mixing your own as well as you think you mixed it, you didn't. Wow, I can't even tell you how wild it is to open this up and smell sweet corn. Like I was standing in a summertime field. It's too cool. Just thought before the lights flipped off and I closed up for recording for the night and downloaded today's video. Take a glimpse here at the pollen farm. You can see we got other tassels popping here too. And there. So that's good. We got at least a few. There we go. There's another one. A few synchronization. And I think we're doing good. Foliar feeded today. Sort of instinctually. Probably should have been hitting them a couple more times in between the last one and this one. Pretty high nutrient demand crop. I digress. Rest of the new soil crates brought in. That's a lot of stuff for a day. Figs and olives are happy over here. Alright, so I wasn't planning on recording anywhere near this much content tonight. I was just planning to come in here and work. But I wanted to share all those tips, tricks, and observations with you. So I thought I would. So I apologize if this video is a bit long. Speaking of more details, my friend Jack over at Geeky Gardens, shout out to Jack at Geeky Gardens, made a comment on, I think it was on the floor video, but it doesn't matter. One of the videos made a comment about why do you need a carbon filter in here? And I gotta say, air quality is super, super, super important for lots of reasons. But one that I noticed when I just opened the tent back up now, I just aired the place out. It's warm, relatively warm outside, so I just blew some fresh air through the house. I like to do that pretty frequently. I like good fresh air. Anyway, I did that, and then I came back in the tent, opened the tent, and I could smell the soil still cooking off some ammonia. So now that it's warming up, it's starting to gas off a bit. And I don't smell that outside the tent because of the carbon filter. And if we didn't have the carbon filter, that would probably not really be too good for me. So, yeah, something to think about. Let me just go a step further. I would most definitely put these back outside if I did not have a carbon filter. Because, yeah. So here we are the next morning, because I've decided to extend this video to be a very long video. Because we got lots to cover. So let's cover it. So, you know what the problem with noobs is? Noobs don't know their gear that well. I'm a noob with the LED lighting, especially the X and Y lights. I'm just not used to LED lights. One, that put out so much photon intensity, and two, such uniform power distribution. I can't express how awesome these are for a controlled grow environment. These are so worth the money. Anyway, on to my point. So in here we have corn plants. You can see that they all got burned up top on the leaves. Well, why did they get burned, right? Because they weren't burning over in the 10 by 10 tent. We didn't have that problem. Well, here's the difference. The X is an 880 watt light, and the Ys are 780 watt lights, or 770, something like that. So there's another 100 watts of power in this light. And these plants were getting tall close to the lights before, but the lights were a little higher over there. They were a little lower in here, so we were a little closer to the lights. And I had the X on full power when I first put them in here, and I forgot to turn it down. So we actually burned a lot of these leaves back. So that's one lesson to learn. Don't overrun the power. So now you'll see that I'm running about 50%, about 40% power here, rather than 100%. So 40% power is 352 watts. Sure doesn't take much, and we're still, we're just in the safe zone of not burning them, right? So that's something you should be aware of if you have LED lights. Don't put your plants too close to them. Don't run your intensities too high. I normally wouldn't make that mistake. You know, that is kind of a noob's mistake, but like I said, I'm just not used to this type of lighting and the intensity and power it's capable of. So that's one thing. Now we're going to take a drop down to the lower half of these guys. I'm going to talk about soil again, because I never shut up about soil. So, what we got here? We got 2 different plantings, 2 different seed treatments, equivalent foliar feed, mostly equivalent soil. So I'm going to redo this experiment now that I have a better handle on it. But this was a good test. So on this side, this right-hand crate, the corn that's obviously significantly taller and larger and more robust, was a soil batch that I remixed some old soil. I think I had turmeric in that batch. And then I mixed in the KISS Amendment Organics mix with that. And I blended that together into this crate. So this crate is old soil remixed with KISS Amendment. This crate here is brand new Pro Mix with just the KISS Amendment. They have the same amount of KISS Amendment, so comparatively the same. Soil volumes are a little different here. I messed that up a little bit. That's due to settling. But they're pretty close, right? But what do we see here? The difference we see here in plant health. Well, I'll tell you what. Right off the bat, we have light colored growth. We have pretty short node length, so that says our lighting was good. But look at all these corn leaves falling off. This is indicative of potassium deficiency. Okay, going up, we're seeing potassium deficiency indicators, or maybe nitrogen deficiency. You know, where the nitrogen mobilizes and goes to the top of the plant. It could be both or either. I tend to think that that's not due to the soil running out, though. If you recall, I said that I let these planters dry out too much over the Christmas vacation, and they dried out a lot. And that drought cost us a tremendous amount of plant growth, health, vigor, and yield. So here we are, back to another perspective on critical points of influence. Because critical points of influence can give us tremendous advantage if we take advantage of them and use foliar feeds and provide optimal environment for plants during critical points of influence and as much as we can throughout the entire plant's life cycle. And it can really hurt us on the flip side of that if we take a hit. Now, we were right just about at the 38-day foliar feed period. That's the third critical point of influence after germination. We have day 9, day 18, and day 38, approximately, in a corn plant's growth, are critical points of influence, and those affect yield dramatically at each of those points. So if you can keep a plant's health at optimal through those stages, its potential yield is much greater, provided you can keep that plant growing healthily throughout the rest of the growing season. So, but what are we really talking about here? Are we talking about increasing yield, or are we talking about limiting yield loss? Well, the truth is, we're talking about limited yield loss. We have plants, corn plants, have the potential, most corn plants have the potential for 8 ears of corn on each plant. So if we're only growing 2 in our fields, we're only approaching 25% of the total yield capacity of the plant. Imagine what we could do in productivity in our fields and farms if we could reach full genetic potential of plants. So, I hope you've got some interesting points out of this. If you have questions or comments, please do so down below. And I hope I haven't lectured on too long about it, but these are super critical, important points about plant growth if you want to maximize yield, health, vigor, and reproductivity. Or just productivity. So I gave this lemon verbena plant to my friend John a while back, but I think along with the soil batch that was in with the worm bins, where I put way too much alfalfa meal and probably a little bit too much guano in as well. This was a similar soil mix in that run, and I think that's part of why this plant's health is crashing. Also, you know, this is really a tropical shrub bush, basically. But he does have good light in his place, and I feel like it's more the soil has crashed. The soil stayed wet since the plant crashed. So what I'm going to do, and I will point out briefly here, there are new shoots popping on this plant. So it is in the process of recovering, but I see how wet this soil really is and how heavy and dense this is, and it's too wet, it's too heavy. And the other thing I saw in here the other day, I don't see them at the moment, but that doesn't mean that they're not here, is fungus gnats. And fungus gnats are an indicator of soil that is way too wet as well. You definitely don't want that. So what I'm going to do is pop this out of here, and I'm going to mix up, well, I have some mixed up soil. Actually, I'm going to pop one of these pre-mixed soils that's been mixed up for about 10 days out of one of these crates, and possibly some of this, and I might put some of this in there. This is same stuff but more recently mixed and a little bit stronger. I might stick a little bit of that in the bottom for a later on effect, and then I'll probably fill the rest in with some of this and some of this, which is more like a seed-in mix, a little bit lighter. But just to give an idea how we're going to correct this plant, and then we'll put it in here in the lab for I don't know, I would think in a week we should see explosive response like this one now, which about a week ago didn't have any leaves on it at all. So shan't be long. So this batch out of this stack, technically not finished cooking, so to speak, until December 5th. It's currently December 1st, so it's a few days early, but you can see we have mycorrhizal fungi in here. Soil temperature is not high. So I will use some of this as the basis for the main mix to go around the plant. I'll use some of this hot stuff, just a couple inches probably on the bottom as a base layer for as the new roots expand, they'll have something to grow into with a little more nutrient. And then I'll fill directly close around the plant's roots with this probably. That's the idea at least. But let's get this out on the tarp and have a look-see at the root system before we make any decisions. So what we got here? Well, we do have a pretty filled out root system on that side. This side, not so much. We see a little bit of, that's a little bit of alfalfa meal right there. And these roots are a little on the brownish side. So I think what we're going to do is break out of this soil. We'll break right out of this soil, and we'll get into some nicer stuff. Get this plant some aeration to the roots rather than let it starve any longer like that. And we may do a little bit of root damage in the process of this, but that's okay because we're also going to do a prune on top, which will help stimulate more root growth by tipping the balance back. I'll talk a little more about that in a sec. So you can understand how I'm doing this and trying to do as little damage as possible to the main plant and root ball. I'm kind of reaching my fingers in and kind of working between the roots to try to kind of shake out some of the old soil. And we're not going to get all of the soil out. It's okay that we're not going to get all the soil out. We just want to get back to the main root ball. And you can see the difference in the soil color there. where it just didn't really take to that new soil mix. So, my bad. Sorry, John. We'll get her straight, I promise. So, now we're back to a root ball we can work with that's not drowning and not in a nutrient balance, which is going to hold it out. Now we can go into some nice Kiss organic soil. So, let's start with let's say, yeah, 2.5 scoops, I'd say, on the bottom of that. Right? That's good. Give it a good mix. Sorry for the horrible camera work. Not used to holding the phone camera. Alright, and then we'll take a little bit of this, throw it down as a buffer. Just a little bit of a buffer layer there. And then we'll go to some of this milk stuff. And we'll throw a scoop of that down. See how the mycelium web is on that already. And you notice I'm kind of gently scooping this, not breaking that mycelial web by like powdering or fluffing the soil, just kind of draping it in there, so to speak. Alright, now we're built up to where we can put a plant in without worrying too badly about burning it. And we can give its roots a little space to run from. And then we'll fill it back in with the rest with some more of this, which we will have to feather a little bit more just to make sure we fill around the roots nicely. Like, there we go. Yeah. There you go. And that soil is pretty moist, so I think I will wait on the watering. But there you go. And then I'll put this soil over to the rest, with the rest of the recycled soil to rest for the winter. Probably amend it with a little bit of Kiss. Cool. So, I'll do an update on this, as soon as it comes up. Oh, almost forgot. Because we want to stimulate some new root growth and help the plant grow back out, we're going to do a little bit of pruning on some old growth here. I know this seems like a really harsh haircut, but you notice I am leaving some bud sites there down here. And mine actually, when it sprouted back, it came out of the base first. I could have actually trimmed that whole thing off. Of course I didn't want to take all that energy from the plant, but you get the idea. So for now we'll leave it like that. I will probably prune off. Oh, that's a good one. We'll see. We'll see. I'll probably prune it and clean it up as it sprouts off new growth. And then it'll be ready to go back to John. But I'll do an update. Cheers. So here we are in the lab. Luca has been in here. That's what John calls his plant. Luca is the name. Luca's been in here for about 10 or 12 days under my care. She's at full resprout speed capacity, throwing shoots out everywhere, even up top. And I'm going to take her back to John today because it's 60 degrees out and she's ready to go. So Nice easy transfer. We don't have to do any special temperature protection to transfer her back to John. Him. I guess Luke is a him. My bad. Transfer him back to John. Yeah, so improvised quick clip update kind of thing. I promised I would talk about the cytokine auxin balance thing. And here is an excellent example of a lemon verbena plant, my big one that you saw earlier in the video that was just recovering. And now you see it about a month later, it's just robust. And I'll tell you what, you shake this plant and the whole house smells of lemon nearly immediately. Very happy, healthy plant. Point I'm getting back to is something I met my friend Medically Fit. Shout out to Medically Fit over at Medically Fit on YouTube. And while I'm at it, I'll shout out to my other co-hosts on Wormhole 2.0. Shout out to Eagle Gardens on YouTube. And shout out to Smiley's Gardens on YouTube. Yeah, go check those guys out and check out Eagle Gardens. Check out Wormhole 2.0 if you want to learn more in-depth soil stuff. We talk about it every couple weeks on there and we go deep. Anyway, cytokine auxin balance. So, shoot tips and root tips, driven by two primary hormones. The two hormones are auxins and cytokines. Auxins promote shoot tip growth, and cytokines promote root tip growth and vegetative growth. And those two regulate plant health. So what happens here? Well, it's pretty simple. When we clip the tip of this off, we take away a whole bunch of auxins that have accumulated toward the light. Auxins and cytokines are pretty complex as far as how they work inside of a plant. If you want to learn more in-depth on that, I recommend you check out Advancing Eco Agriculture's podcast. John goes deep in depth about that, John Kempf. And another one that's great I just stumbled across on Spotify is a podcast called Project Botany. They're short, like 5 to 15 minute clips that go into great detail on botany. I may contact them and see if I can include some clips and cite some video references. There's no video or picture reference with those, but excellent information regardless. Point being here though, cytokine auxin balance. So when I prune that top of that lemon verbena plant back, that tipped that balance and pushed that plant to promote more root growth. Well, that's what we want. We've just freshly transplanted a plant into soil and we've pruned the top back. We want it to promote root growth and reach out into that soil, grab new nutrients, establish new connections with biology in that soil, and start that whole photosynthetic process up. So the soil helps get that process going, and then that cytokine auxin balance is what regulates how this growth works. So every time we clip a plant back, we tip that balance, in a direction. And the same applies, if we clip roots on the bottom, it goes the other way. We could clip roots on the bottom and do a root prune and tip the auxin balance more and promote, an elongation of growth if we wanted, most likely. I haven't experimented with that. I don't really have a need to. Occasionally I do root prunes, but they're usually just because plants are pot bound or root bound. I know this is another long, wordy lecture on it, but I really wanted to illustrate these details as well as I could. So I hope this has helped you in some way. Just back in on my coffee break, check on the tent. Looking here and I'm like, what the heck? I don't recall planting chicory. I'm pretty sure this is chicory. I'm almost 100% positive it's chicory. And all I can think is it must have been in that mesclun mix. And I'm seeing another very similar, if not exactly alike, plant stalk here. And other little flowers popping. I guess I didn't realize that was in the mesclun mix. But for those who don't know, chicory is an awesome soil builder. If you're out in native soils, boy, that can really extract minerals from both deep in the ground. It's a great pollinator feeder. I think it's a nitrogen fixer. It's an awesome plant. So interesting to see that in here. I probably will get 1 or 2 more harvests of actual good greens lettuce out of this. I might let these go to bulk, capture the seed, and use that as some of my forward-moving lettuce seed for the future. But we'll see. I mentioned earlier in this video, I talked about the fungus gnats a little bit. There's an interesting cluster of them around the flagging hanging off the light here. And I see those predator wasp type things flying around in here too. I think they might be nabbing them. Yeah, I think they are. We'll have to study that more closely. I actually have a camera I could stick in here to monitor that. I don't have a way to pipe the feed though. Anyway, interesting. This is my hydro unit. Been working on this for about 4 or 5 years now. I've managed to develop it up to an aeroponic fog system from what was originally an ebb and flow system. Originally I was just growing lettuce and having a hard time with that, and now I'm able to grow tomatoes, potatoes, broccoli, pretty much
you can see a tasty red tomato growing. By the way, these tomatoes that we've been eating out of here are like garden fresh, like literally like you picked them straight from the garden. All the nutrients are organic, and the hydro system is fully automated, with the exception of a nutrient and pH adjustment exchange, which is scheduled to be upgraded at some point when financing is available. I'm going to take you down and let you get a look at the root system now, and maybe you'd like to have a look at some nice fresh potatoes that are growing inside the hydro unit in the grow tubes. These potatoes have been in here for about 4 months. They were started from a seed potato right there, which produces the fogging mist that keeps the roots and the nutrients and everything rolling. Well, first let me give you a close-up view of a nice, ripe, juicy red tomato out of the hydro unit. And I'll hold it up and spin it around for the camera a little bit. You can see that it's looks like it just came straight out of the garden. Color's a little off with the camera here, but they're definitely a bright red. You can plainly see that they're delicious. You can see it, but only if you could taste it. Well, I guess what I'm going to do now is go into a little bit more of a technical aspect of the hydro unit. Well, first off, this is the current lighting system. Well, first off, you can plainly see that this is sort of a homemade gig. The frame for the lighting system was constructed out of 2x4s, as was the rest of the frame for the unit. It was what I had, it was available. I improvised a cable system, a multi-pulley cable system, to raise and lower the lighting structure on the unit, which at this time is a little bit on the heavy side. But you'll see the new design will be much lighter, and also currently we're using 8-foot fluorescent bulbs as our lighting source, and we're going to be switching that up soon also to a LED or a light. Its original voltage was around 3.3 or 4.2, something like that. I've stepped it up to run on 12 volts, so I'm screaming the ever-loving crap out of this motor when I run it. But so far it's held up. The pulleys run up from the spool.
You get the point. You can grow in hydroponics, right? So why all that crap about hydroponics if I'm growing in soil now? Because I still see people out there say, oh, you can grow just as good in hydro or better in hydro as you can in soil. I don't think so. I think when you look into the science of it, the microbial metabolites from microbes in soil can do a whole lot more than simple anionic nutrient transition. And I know hydroponics can do some amazing things. I've tried it myself, you can see that. I've done some of the coolest hydroponic stuff, man. Aeroponics is so much fun. What a cool way to grow. But let's get better. Let's always get better. And so that's what I strive for, to grow better, healthier, happier plants that bring more nutrition to myself and the people around me, and that bring more nutrition to the animals that eat those plants, and then if we eat those animals, that brings us more nutrition. There's science behind this. This is not just etheric crap. There's science. So that's my point. And I know this is a really long video, and I'm going into a lot of details, and it might sound a little preachy. I'm sorry if I do, but I hear a lot of people say a lot of things. The truth of the matter is, there's always a better way. What I'm doing now, I'll probably look back on in 5 or 10 years and cringe. I do at some of the things I did 2 years ago. So, it's always a learning curve. We have to stay open-minded and be willing to learn and interact with others and learn from other people's experience, mistakes, and what they've learned, and share our knowledge with other people. And the more we share back and forth with people without attacking each other, the more we can learn from each other. And that's a really important part of the community. And you'll find that community even in the soil, I promise you. Just a quick checkup on the corn. Tassels continuing to evolve. Some pollen sacs starting to open. Additional tasseling continuing. All bent over. So wild. Seeing it in a controlled environment like this. There we go. More tassels popping. Yeah. Just a quick update. 12/28. 2 years since the X walked out. Been celebrating with some nice music.
So yeah, still 12/28, but getting later in the day. Been editing, recording. Another point to make. Watered those guys lightly initially on transplant, but have not since. The black crim on the right, no water in last night at all. Soil was fairly moist. See a little bit of wilty in there, right? Kind of reaching out. Basil here on the bottom of the San Marzano, definitely showing some wilt, hurting from that transplant and needing a little water. Starting to see just a hair touch of like droop and leaf tips here, a little bit of loss of turgor pressure here and there. Maybe a little bit of nutrient mobility starting to show up, issues. Yeah, time to give both of these a good soaking. But they've had 24 hours for the roots to kind of seek out and reach out, and that may not sound like a lot of time. You'd be amazed how fast a healthy growing plant can reach new roots out into soil. So just another detail to pay attention to. Try to encourage the plants to reach out on their own rather than over babying them. At least that's my perspective.
Okay, I'm tired. You're probably tired of listening to me talk. We've covered a tremendous amount of stuff tonight. And the whole reason that this video got so long is to get into some of these little smaller details, because we're going to go really deep into some really technical stuff coming up here in the next parts of this series. We're going to go into lighting and airflow in much greater depth, and all of those factors, and a lot of these other pieces that coordinate all together to make this a functioning system, to have growth like you see behind me here, vibrant and vigorous. Now, I got to step back for a minute because I have to address the elephant in the room. I'm out here recording stuff and back and forth and editing videos, and get back there and I'm editing and I'm thinking about the actual environmental impact of this operation. We can't ignore that in this picture. So let's just back up and put this all in scope, because I have not had a comment yet, but I'm sure I will get a salty comment from someone. The perspective on this is that we're using a controlled grow environment to better study regenerative agriculture practices, and to be able to isolate and study different parts of those practices in a controlled environment so that we can better understand those practices. The entire primary goal, ultimately, is to employ these practices in the field better. But, yes, in the meantime, there's a huge carbon footprint with this. We can't ignore that. I'm not going to BS you about that. The truth of the matter is, there's a huge carbon footprint. We're drawing a lot of power here compared to what we could do in normal sunlight. This is all artificial, and it's all probably powered. Well, actually, I'm in upstate New York. We do get some of our power from hydroponics, from hydroelectric. So it's possible some of this power is coming from hydroelectric. It's possible it's not running on nuclear or coal. But at the end of the day, we all know what we're doing here, right? We're burning more energy than we actually should be for our footprint, for what we are, for what we do. And our energy demands keep going up, so we have to look at better ways to manage that and handle that. LED lights are one, man. Hey, we've made massive, massive improvements. I've never seen such explosive growth in artificial controlled grow environments under HID lights. Never in my life have I seen explosive growth like this. And it's two things, right? It's the light. We saw that when I first moved plants in here. You could see the explosive growth happen immediately before the soil changes. But now, with the soil changes, it should be blatantly obvious to even someone who's new to growing plants or being around plants or watching plants grow. These plants are vibrant and healthy for the most part. Now we got a few spots we got to tweak up, but we're working on it. So I just want to address that. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. You're right, there's a massive carbon footprint. No one said it yet, so I'll say it up front. That's right. But we're studying regenerative practices, and we're going to get much, much better at doing that. So that way when we go back out in the field, we can be much more efficient at it. And so this gives us sort of a lab environment for a natural system. It's about the best hybrid that we can do with current technology, at least that I can do with current technology, with my budget, my capabilities, and my knowledge. So I just want to share that with you. I hope you find this interesting or informative. To that end, this channel is free content to you. I don't have any of this content behind a firewall. I put up a Patreon account years back with the plan to maybe try and get some sponsors. That's kind of a nightmare. I don't really want to do that. What I really want to do is put out really killer content for people and teach people how to grow better plants and learn about their health. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. So if you want to help me do that, what can you do? Well, I'm here on YouTube. I'm on Spotify. I have an Instagram account. It's a Reboot Agriculture on Instagram. I throw a few clips up here and there, or excerpts, pieces, parts. Mostly I'm here on YouTube and Spotify. Comrades and Farms is my podcast on Spotify. I do some of these videos on there, so you can actually check those out on Spotify on your mobile device if you want. But of course YouTube's on mobile as well. And I'm on here. So how can you help? You can share this. Share this with your friends. Subscribe. Check out my content. Comment. Ask questions down below. That's all I ask. That's all I'm asking for. So if you got to watch a couple commercials in the process, I'm sorry. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Hope you found this interesting or informative. I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe. And remember, keep your friends close, your farmers closer.